we'll find out. But I think
Okay.
I think you have to have
Extra premium.
You have to be approved as a LinkedIn live broadcaster.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I didn't realize what a process that was. So we are live right now, just so everyone knows. But I didn't realize that being a LinkedIn live broadcaster was an application process. And then when you apply, it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks for them to approve.
Oh, wow.
So until you do that, you can tell StreamYard that you want to go live on LinkedIn, but it won't actually do it at the moment. Yeah. So
you have to send LinkedIn your reel? Is that what is it you have to do to get approved?
You have to fill out this application, and then you have to send it links to past live streams that you've done.
Pretty much your reel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay.
Yeah. And hey, Heather, thanks for letting me know. I'm glad you sent a note. Appreciate it. And then you also have to send them the LinkedIn profile of all the administrators of your LinkedIn page. So I had to send them my profile, Jason's profile, and then one other person. And I guess they want to make sure that they're going to look at their profiles and make sure none of them do something that would break LinkedIn guidelines, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, so, well, it is 6 o'clock straight up. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're still missing a guest, but I'm hopeful that he will show. So thank you everyone for joining us. We still have folks logging on. So we're just going to welcome you to the Servant Leader Mindset virtual book launch. I'm Shannon Lee, the author. I'm joined by some friends here, Christy Bertolo, give a wave. I think they might be able to guess who you are, Christy. James Gabriel Brown is here, and then Brian Shields is here. And so I'm joined offline by our unofficial producer, Jason Otero, who is helping me with any kind of logistical issues. And also, if anything kind of comes up, hey, Dean, good to see you. Thanks for being here. You know, Dean, you are such a huge supporter of Relay. And Dean is someone who on LinkedIn, he's always sharing and commenting, and I really appreciate that. So I love all of the love that you give us online, Dean. I appreciate it. Dean actually helped Relay get our BBB charity accreditation. So that's a huge undertaking, and he helped us with that. So Servant Leader Mindset is a book that actually, it's kind of interesting. What a lot of authors do is they write a book, and then they say, oh, I'm going to try to monetize this into, learning programs and online classes and to coaching and etc. Well, we did it the opposite, and I did it the opposite way. And so I've been with Relay for about 6.5 years, and Relay's are really our distinctive is servant leadership. And some folks in a program that we run were telling us, hey, we love servant leadership, but we wish there was a model for servant leadership. So what we did was we created one and called it Care to Lead. And a lot of work went into Care to Lead as far as how we would help people understand the mindsets of servant leadership, some actions of servant leadership. Mainly it was very mindset heavy. So we created this learning program that lived inside of this larger program that we run called Next Gen. And it also exists as a separate workshop, etc. And so somewhere along the line, we said, well, we need a Care to Lead book. And so I started writing that book, but then realized, you know what, I really think that this isn't a book about Care to Lead per se, although for those of you who have read it or even started reading it, you'll know that I mentioned Care to Lead in this. It's really a book that dives deeper into the mindsets of Care to Lead. So in other words, I went backwards. I did the learning program first, leadership development program, and then went into the kind of the operating system of Care to Lead. And it's probably because mindset is, when it comes to leadership, the way we show up both personally and professionally, especially professionally, because I think there's a lot of pain at work. Mindset is what I am just most passionate about. And so I've dedicated years to learning about it for myself, implementing it in my life. And so that's kind of what came into this. So Relay is a nonprofit organization here in Columbus, Ohio. We're a leadership development organization. And while I did this in my time at Relay, this project is bigger than that, if you will, in that it represents probably 2.5 decades of work of mine in this space of mindset and personal development. But definitely the impetus and the inspiration was after we created that Care to Lead program. So the original book launch was actually supposed to be sometime in February, March. And I believe the board of directors.
Happened?
I don't know. Something strange happened. Hey, Amy, good to see you here. Glad to have you. So the, with COVID happening, we had to postpone it. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And at first, I'll be honest, I was disappointed. But then Jason and Shannon Welther, our program manager, Jason's our community engagement manager, as well as some board members said, what if we did something virtual? And so at first it kind of pushed me into it, not because I didn't want to do a book launch, but because I wasn't sure a virtual one would be the best route. But I'm so glad we did it this way, because it enabled us to, even just leading up to tonight, it enabled us to really promote the book and kind of build up to something. And so I'm really excited for the guests that are here tonight. I'm excited for everyone who's joining us both on Facebook and on YouTube, and for folks who are going to watch the replay if you decide to do that. So welcome everyone. So thankful that you're here. So I want to introduce you to our guests one more time, just so I can explain what we're going to do. Each of the guests has chosen hi Diana. Each of our guests has chosen a passage from an excerpt from the book, and they're going to read it to us and then explain why it resonated with them. And we might have a short little conversation, and we'll go one at a time and discuss that with everybody. And so hopefully those of you who haven't picked up a book, maybe this will encourage you to get a copy. As we're going along, I encourage anyone joining online to make comments, to ask questions. There will be time for questions at the end. And so we'll be pulling some of those out, but you don't have to wait till then to ask your question. You can ask your question anytime, and then we'll be taking time at the end to really check those out. So, but first, before I introduce the first guest and hear their excerpt, I want to let you know that we're going to do some giveaways tonight. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask you to put a certain word in the comments. And if you put the word in the comment, that lets us know that you want to be in the drawing. And there's 2 different opportunities. So the first opportunity is if you want to get a ticket to Impact Columbus. Impact Columbus is our annual event. It's on September 30th. And it's all about bringing together those in our local community to impact our local community. And this year's theme is all around, how do we move forward as individuals, team members, organizations, when we really look at the effects of COVID-19 and this racial revolution that all communities have been going through. So even if you're joining us right now and you don't live in Columbus, I really believe that even though we're going to be talking about the specifics as it pertains to our community, I think that many of the topics and the speakers are going to have a lot to say in general about what's going on. So if you want a ticket to that, so what do you get? This event is a virtual live kickoff for 1 hour, followed by a virtual conference. And that conference is going to give you access to 13 or 14 speakers that are going to talk about that big topic, but they're going to approach it from lots of different perspectives. And so we have speakers from all over the place. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly just so that you can see who's on the lineup really quick. So we've got Karen Ashley, who's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at AEP, Doug Allman, President and CEO of Pelotonia, a small little organization that you might not have heard of, myself, Jason Barger, who is the author of Step Back from the Baggage Claim. He's a speaker and coach. Kim Jacobs is our former Chief of Police of Columbus Division of Police, and she's the president of the Columbus Division of Police Foundation. Elsie Johnson, founder of Zora's House. Shannon Hardin, who is the president of Columbus City Council, Aaron Upchurch, executive director of Kaleidoscope Youth Center. Ruth Mulligan, founder of Articulation. Susan Roberts, the founder of Unifying Solutions. Pastor Eric Miles, who obviously is a pastor. He's also an HR manager at Cover My Meds. Alex Traxler, who's the owner of Griffin Hollow Studio. And then we have Dr. Daryl Gray, Associate Professor, College of Medicine at The Ohio State University. He has a ton of other accolades. He does a lot of work in equity in healthcare. And Deontay Johnson, owner of Soul Classics. So we've got a bunch of amazing folks lined up for you. And so if you want a ticket, you need to comment impact in the comment section. And at the end, so you have to stay with us till the end. At the end, Jason is basically randomizing these names. There's an actual website that helps you do this. You randomize the names, and then he's going to pick a winner for the ticket. What's the ticket worth? Well, right now they're $40. They're going to top out at $60. So right now, if you were to buy that ticket today, it would cost you $40. If you buy it, I think in a couple weeks, it's $60. So we're going to give one of those away. The second thing we're going to give away, and I'll be really quick about this so we can get to our guests, you're going to use the word care, and that gets you a Care to Lead registration. Only a few of you may be available for this. Care to Lead is going to be next week. It is the program that I mentioned in my introductory section. It's our model for servant leadership. It's 3 hours next Wednesday, the 19th, and Thursday, the 20th. And so you need to have those times available. That's the only time it's taking place this month. It's not transferable to anything. So we want you to put care in the comments. And again, Jason's going to keep track of that. And at the end, we'll do that drawing. Okay? Yay, everybody, everybody scream for ice cream. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. So let's move to our guest. Brian, why don't we start with you? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, you're unmuted. Awesome. Share with us your passage. Tell everyone what page number it's on. Read us the passage and then talk a little bit about why it resonated with you.
All right. So I'm actually on page 48. Let me see where I'm left off here. All right, so you could say my attraction to the ideals of living your best life were aspirational, not functional. This habit caused much confusion and frustration for me because I saw those ideals as attainable, just not for me. But once I learned I could change my life by changing how I perceive my life, I became unstoppable. I finally realized that my aspirational life was within reach. The growth that ensued and continues to this day positively improved my work performance, my personal and professional relationships, and helped me finally gain control over my seemingly inconsistent anxiety. So I thought that was a really good lead in to the rest of the book, and it resonated with me because I see a lot of honesty with your writing, Shannon, in this book. I actually really liked the beginning of the book because it really told me what drove you to write this book. I gave like the history and kind of like your where you are in your career and how you got to the point you are today. And I think you made a really good decision not trying to write this book until now, because you were able to put a lot of your life experience into this book, and I can see that and hear it as I read the book. So I think it was a great lead in to the five. If you look at the beginning of the book, it's a great lead into the five mindsets of servant leadership. So, are there any comments on that one?
Yeah,
go ahead,
James.
Go ahead.
No, I'd rather hear from you.
Oh, I found that passage so interesting. Not necessarily as related to the book, but just kind of life, right? I told my daughter this morning that that comparison was the thief of joy. That you can't compare other people's lives, other people's best lives to your life, right? And to get as much out of life has nothing to do with anybody else's life, right? It has to be all internalized, right? And honestly, this whole mindset book, the whole mindset of servant leadership applies so much to parenting, and it's maybe because I have an 11-year-old. So I've had plenty of employees, and I still think I've always related it back to parenting and how to make them better than than me, because I'm not that good.
Yeah, I have two 7-year-olds and a 9-year-old myself.
Right?
So I hear you.
That's really interesting because, first of all, Brian, thank you for pointing that out. Whenever you're writing something like this, there's always a question of, and I talk about this as a mindset vulnerability in the book, and that is there a point of being too vulnerable, and is there a point of giving too much disclosure in a book? Because, and I think for my first effort, as I look back on it, I think I'd be comfortable being more vulnerable and having more disclosure. And it's actually, that thought alone has inspired the theme for my next book. But what the tie-in that I want to make to what James said is just this idea that this is a whole life application, that even though this was initially inspired from a workplace program, which it still has a great application to the workplace, I think gone are the days where we view our lives as, here's our home silo, here's our work silo. Here, I think more and more people are seeing these things kind of intersect, and even more so when so many of us are working from home, that there needs to be a new understanding of what it looks like to bring our whole selves to everything that we do, without feeling like at the same time that we've lost a lot of privacy. And so for some people, that's super important. And I think that when we balance this idea of vulnerability and disclosure, we can find our answer there. And so could I have been more vulnerable? Maybe. Could I have disclosed more? Possibly. But I'm really proud of what I did so far. And I'm excited that resonated with you, Brian, because it actually was, when I wrote that passage that you referenced, I remember writing that thinking, wow, this really was aspirational for me, but it wasn't actually functioning in my life. And I felt that was necessary to say, because I think a lot of us feel that way about a lot of areas of our life. And think about social media and what we put out there in picture form and in our stories. And is that the highlight reel that's really aspirational of what we wish our whole life was, or does it really represent the whole of our lives? I don't know so much. So yeah, that's an interesting passage. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, and Shannon, I was going to add to, this is not my passage, but it was one that I had highlighted. But to the parenting point, even just reading at the very beginning, it was on page 17. But when you're defining what servant leadership is, and then you specify, what I love most about this definition is the recognition of self, that I cannot give from an empty place. I cannot give what I do not possess. And I was motivated to include this in the definition because of my old way of thinking and believing, which was this: if I serve until I'm empty, then I've really served. And I think for me, during especially this time right now, where we're going through all of these unknowns, and unknowns as a parent, so similar to both of you. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and we're navigating all of this unknown, and we're navigating things that are so out of our control. And we can't even get control if we wanted to have control, and so and I've had that conversations with others of, we know as parents that we have to give disappointing messages. We know that, but we've never had to do it at this amplification while we're disappointed ourselves. So I loved when I that was, kind of one of the first things that drew me in of, I know that I have to, make sure that I'm not giving from an empty place, but that's, that is something that I have to be really intentional about too. And it is beyond just how I show up at work or how I show up, with my colleagues, but it is that, whole self concept. Yeah.
And taking care of ourselves so that we don't get empty is is not just about bubble baths and glasses of wine and getting
But they're helpful.
getting
I do that
our-
daily.
They are helpful. I'm not going to lie. Like, as soon as we're done tonight, I'm going to celebrate with a glass of wine. That's for sure. But
I'm going to reach over here.
Or I'm not sure what, and self-care could be things like, making sure that we eat healthy and work out and all that good stuff. But I like to think of self-care and staying filled up as putting some depth to it. And it's things like this. It's things like keeping my promises to myself. If I say I'm going to do this for myself, that I actually do it. I think it's definitely okay to change your mind. I'm not a fan of keeping commitments that are detrimental to self, because sometimes we make commitments and then we realize later this is not possible. I'm not a fan of beating ourselves up and keeping commitments that don't make sense anymore. But when we make appointments with ourselves, when we draw boundaries, like at work, that we uphold those boundaries. I think these are all ways that we can do that. I recently wrote a note to all of our, I write a weekly note to really any employer that's hired us to do anything. I send it to their HR professional at the company. And I was talking about this idea of allowing employees or associates to vent to us, that we think that we're being supportive. And so one of the ways, and this is not in the book specifically, but this is a way to kind of like paying off of what you said, Christy. Self-care in the workplace can be about holding up a boundary and understanding that it is not caring to let people vent to you. It drains your energy and it doesn't move anything forward. That we have this misunderstanding that, well, people just need to be heard. Yes, they need to be heard, but the job of the leader is to develop their people. And if all I'm letting you do is vent to me, which is potentially dragging down my energy and emptying out my vessel, so to speak, then I can't help you. And I'm not developing you in that moment. All I'm doing is allowing you to complain. And so I won't go into it now, but there are ways that we can leverage those opportunities that fill up other people and keep us full as well. And it all has to do with viewing it as a development opportunity with that person. What do they really need in that moment when they're venting? Well, they need to grow in a certain area. It's a cry for help, essentially, that I need some growth. I need some help. My mentor, I went to him one time, this is a long time ago when I used to work for him, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And I started venting to him about a coworker, and he stopped me politely and said, in 2 sentences, tell me what you need. And I had to stop and I said, man, what do I need? And I realized I expressed it as an outcome. And then he said, okay, what help do you need from me getting to that outcome? Do you need me to step in and take over? Do you need advice? Do whatever? And what I needed was his advice on having a conversation with someone else. I didn't want him to step in and take over the problem for me. And by him doing that, by not allowing me to vent, his energy wasn't being dragged down. And I learned an important lesson, that venting to my boss is not productive. It's also not respectful. He didn't even have to say it. I knew it. I figured it out. It's not respectful of his time. It doesn't honor my own time, and it didn't change anything. What changed something was when I figured out what I really needed, which I needed coaching. I needed him to coach me on how to have a difficult conversation with a colleague, and that's exactly what he did. And I learned another way to have a difficult conversation that day. And so we both left that conversation feeling lifted. And so sometimes staying filled up professionally is not letting people encroach upon those types of things and vent. And it just made me think of that. So I'm going to come back to you, Christy. James, I want to hear about your favorite passage.
Yeah, sure. I think what you just said kind of leads right into that. My passage is on page 137. It's called "A Common Mistake." This one spoke to me pretty well as a leader of a number of groups through the years, and it reads: "Many leaders want to know when enough is enough. How do we know how much is enough gratitude? My question is, enough for what? If we are showing gratitude to create a reaction or awareness in another person, it's not gratitude, it's manipulation. What we are really doing is wearing the trappings of gratitude in order to serve our own selfish need to be validated. That kind of expression is from a needy energy, not an energy of actually showing gratitude. I show gratitude whenever I feel it, regardless if the person responds in kind or not. It's not about a response, and you are never really finished because there's always something to express gratitude for. It spoke to me because I've always felt myself as someone who could call out disingenuous gratitude, where I felt like I was being manipulated. I would never want an employee to feel like I was giving them something because I felt like it was time to give them something. And I think, and later in this chapter, you talk about honesty and being able to bring gratitude to difficult situations, right? You want to give gratitude to someone who's not necessarily doing the perfect job, not only to people that are doing the greatest job, right? You don't want that to be shown. Again, to parenting, right? Everybody has a favorite child. I don't. I have one, but but you can't continue. You can't have a larger relationship without kind of balancing the gratitude and say probably the wrong word, but discipline, right? Yeah. And to show gratitude even for failure, which I really liked, right? Just to be, it's like you tried. That's like the greatest thing in the world. So I love the moment. I love the idea of gratitude. And then and you talk later about the gratitude journal and the 3 3s. I think that's what it's called. Yep. 3 3 and 3. Yeah.
3 3. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm amazed at how much I used to weaponize gratitude. And what I mean by that is I want to be grateful, but only if you're going to return it to me and appreciate my gratitude. I didn't know that, though. A lot of us actually feel that way, but we don't know we feel that way. And here's how I know that to be true, because when I go through trainings with folks, I ask them why they don't show more gratitude at work. You know what the number one response is? The number one response is, well, people don't appreciate it, so why bother? And so I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us feel like, well, why should I do this if I don't appreciate that? And here's the thing. If we want to feel gratitude and appreciation, those are feelings. And we create our own feelings with our own thoughts. Mm-hmm. So if my spouse is not doing something that I want, the way I think about him determines if I feel love for him, not the other way around. It's not he does something and I feel love for him and I feel all, rainbows and butterflies. No, what happens is he does something or doesn't, and I have a thought about that, and then I have a feeling. So I can create feelings of love and gratitude and appreciation by the way I think about people. And so when someone, to use your point, James, when someone fails at work or they drop the ball or whatever, yes, we have to deal with and train people and develop them. Yes. But it's a totally different feeling to have, let's say Christy is my direct report. And the thought I have is Christy's always dropping the ball. Well, that's going to create a feeling of maybe discouragement. And when I'm discouraged, I might withdraw from Christy. There might be, depending on my personality, there's a bunch of things I might do if I'm discouraged with her performance. But let's look at it again. If Christy drops the ball and I say, wow, that's interesting. Here's another opportunity for me to coach Christy and for us to grow. That makes me grateful and happy and excited because now I have an opportunity for growth and so does she. And so I can express that and I can show up to Christy in a way that demonstrates that I'm grateful for the opportunity. Everybody wants a leader who shows up like that. Right. Who actually feels like they're being like there's someone in my corner and they're looking for my success. I just interviewed both Ken Blanchard and then after that I interviewed Jerry Ridge, who's the CEO of a little company called WD-40. And Jerry said this, he said, we need to be giving people not only the final exam at the beginning of the class, at the beginning of the semester, so to speak, but we need to be giving them the answer key. And so if I have someone who's messing up, I have to be thinking, what do they need to get an A? Not how can I discipline them for getting a D? But that's our default. So anyway, but that manipulation piece was huge when I realized that really whenever I do something with any expectation of something in return, it has a manipulative tone to it, even if we don't intend that. And remember, I like to remind people that impact is always more important than intent. You might not intend to be manipulative, but the impact is a manipulative one, whether you intend it or not. So this is not questioning anyone's intentions, but rather to be aware of the impact. James?
Yeah, I made an analogous connection to anonymous charitable contributions, right? Like the end result is good. You made an impact, but you don't get anything back for it, right? These are, you at least not expecting anything back, right? Like you donate to NPR. All right, so I'm just, I'll give you a little insight, right? I don't want the tote bag. I'm fine.
I want the tote bag.
I'm totally fine. But keeping it, it's really about feeling, it's really about doing what you believe in and helping people excel versus getting response back.
Yeah. If you think of gratitude as a value, and I don't know why I always think of my values on a totem pole, maybe because it's like a nice visual. But if gratitude is a value of mine, I express it because it's a value. It's something from in here, and it's not dependent on external circumstances. Because if I give and withhold my gratitude, then whenever I withhold gratitude in an effort to teach you a lesson, let's say, or to punish you for something, essentially what I'm being disloyal to myself because I'm not honoring my own value system, which is another way we stay filled up, back to what Christy said. Now, before we go to Christy, I just want to remind everyone real quickly, especially if you just joined, that we're having 2 giveaways at the end in just 15 minutes from now. So hang tight. If you put the word impact in the comments, your name's going to be put into a drawing for a ticket to Impact Columbus, which is September 30th. Go to impactcolumbus.com to learn all about the event. I don't have time to go back and show you the website again, but impactcolumbus.com. You can see all about the event. It's both a virtual live event and a virtual conference after the live event. And then if you're interested in that, oh, by the way, even if you're not available on September 30th, you have access to that conference for, I believe it's forever. So even if you can't get all of the talks, if you can't watch everything that day, you do have access with this ticket after the event. Care to Lead is different though. We have a Care to Lead session taking place next week. I'll call it like our flagship training program. It's our model for servant leadership. It's a 6-hour program. It's 3 hours next Wednesday, the 19th, 3 hours next Thursday, the 20th. And we're going to give away a free registration of that. So you actually need to be available those 2 days at that time. So, and I believe Brian's going to be on that in that workshop. So you'll get to hang out with Brian for those 2 days as well. So
I look forward to it.
Yes. So, all right. So I want to remind everybody of that. And I am seeing the questions and the comments come through. Thank you, Rich, for your kind words. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Andrew, thank you so much. And Charmaine for your congratulations. Amy, I see your question. We're going to do a Q&A at the end in case you didn't hear that earlier, Amy, and we will get to that in just a moment. So we're going to round out our guests' discussion with Christy's chosen excerpt from the book.
All right, awesome. I want to give a little shout out and hi to Charmaine though, because we were a part of Next Gen class, the first class in our special Starfish Alliance cohort. So go us. But anyways, my excerpt comes from page 127, and it's a part of the attached to something. So this is something I even though I've heard it from you, Shannon, multiple times, I still struggle. Some of the things in the book, I'm like a super pro at. This is one I'm still working on a lot. But the passage says, These mindsets are not meant to create a pattern and a process that if you follow them 1, 2, 3, you'll get the outcome that you want. To make that kind of claim would be anti-ethical to the point. I'm encouraging you to actually let go of outcomes, detach from outcomes, commit and work your plans, but let go of what that work can create. I don't want you focused on your outcomes at all, not as an individual or not as a leader. Focus on your goals absolutely all day long, but detach from what happens as a result of working your goals. Trust me, in that detached state, when one of those goals or outcomes goes awry, you'll be better equipped to pivot and make the next best decision. So for me, the switching of outcomes is really, really hard. And it's interesting, even kind of back to that gratification point. I think even when you are someone who, like myself, I always feel like, oh, I'm not doing it for the acknowledgement. I'm not doing it for the gratification. I'm doing it because I love to do it, which is true and it's genuine, but I have expected outcomes. And I put myself out there with thinking that the work I do is going to have outcomes in a certain way. And so when they don't happen, even if I have again, back to my earlier thing about control of the situation, I still hold myself responsible for every outcome, even if it has, something to do with a neighbor down the street that I couldn't even be a part of. And so, that was a place that I think, especially right now, in an environment that we're in, is that I can focus on my day and I can focus on my goals, and I can, release the outcome of what that may be and what I can and can't control. So yeah, that was a circle highlight, and rewatch the Oprah video, which
Yeah.
one of my favorite videos that I keep saved in my text messages in case I need to forward it to people to tell them, release the outcomes, release it. So
yeah, she has a great video on how do you work your, I'm gonna botch the exact description, but how do you work your goals and then let go, or something like that?
Yeah.
Because it is a both and. It's not a, anytime we're working on a goal, we have an idea of what we hope and what we think the outcome will be. It's not that there's not a vision there.
Right.
It's just that what happens, at least for me, and what inspired a lot of what was in that passage or in that chapter, was I would get so attached to those outcomes that when they didn't work out, I would be, just almost grief stricken. Like I was such a failure. And in that state, I couldn't see any other opportunities. And what's been happening as I learned to detach more and more and to do it more effectively is the outcomes that actually occur are sometimes better than what I envisioned. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad I was open to a different path here. And so I recently went through this, and Christy's on my board, and there's a couple board members that are making comments who already know this, but the stuff in this book, the tough thing about writing a book is you get held to a certain, like, hey, Glenn, you wrote about this, but it's okay, I expected it. But, like a lot of organizations, I don't know that every organization has been affected the same. In fact, I'm sure they haven't been. Nonprofits in particular have had some specific challenges in that the demand for what they do goes up, and the revenue is going down for lots of different reasons. And so that creates some particular challenges for Relay as a nonprofit, lots of other nonprofits. And so I was struggling just mentally and emotionally with, different things that we were having to tackle to solve for those problems in the organization. And I was in I call it the dark place, but I'd shared with the board that, when we had our board meeting last Friday, they were asking me, what's the outlook now? How are you feeling about things? And, I admitted to them, I had to go through a process where I finally reached acceptance and was able to detach from whatever happens as a result of COVID-19 and the effects on our organization. And what has happened in that process, it feels like letting go And detachment is almost saying, I'm okay with what's happening. And that's not what you're doing. What you're saying is, I can handle whatever comes, and whatever comes, I'm going to be okay. And what's interesting is when you get to that point, it's then and only then that the creativity flows that gives you ideas for solutions for the problem. And I couldn't see those solutions before because I was in fear. And so when I said that, one of our board members said, actually, I read this really good book recently. And then he read a passage he held this book up and we were all laughing. So thank you all for being here and for sharing that. I'm going to give a quick reminder about the giveaways, and then we are going to do some Q&A. So use CARE if you want a free seat to Care to Lead next week. Use Impact if you want a ticket. Yes, you can enter both. Jason, I don't want the same winner for both. So whatever the randomizer says, make sure we have 2 different winners. That would just be a bummer for people if it was the same person. Okay, so I'm going to get to your question, Amy, but I did want to address a big question I've been asked a lot by friends and colleagues, which was, how did I get over the fear of putting something original out there and receiving criticism? Because I know so many people who've wanted to put something creative out there, and I'm one of those people. I wanted to do this for years, long before I even worked at Relay. I mean, I've talked about and thought about writing a book forever. And especially if you're putting anything out there that's creative, there's a lot of fear with that. And for me, it was fear of criticism. So if you're in that boat, I've got some ideas for you. So first, I had to come to understand that people whose criticism truly matters to me fit on a piece of paper about this big. And I learned this from Brene Brown. And that doesn't mean that when I hear negative things that I don't see if there's something in there for me to learn. But there are a few people, like 4 or 5 people, that when they criticize me, I pay really close attention because I already know that there's trust and I already know where it's coming from. Like I never doubt motivation because I know them so well. They know me so well. And so because of that, I can listen to it from a place of love and trust, and I don't have to worry about if there's anything weighted to it. And so I guess my advice there is, you have to take it with a grain of salt and really only weight really heavily those that are closest to you that you could fit on a little 1-inch piece of paper, 1x1 piece of paper. Second, I had to come to realize that a lot of people are quick to point out what's wrong with something that they don't like, but a lot of times it's because they're being challenged and they can't really handle the cognitive dissonance. And so the cognitive dissonance, if they're not used to really diving into that, they're going to criticize it. I can learn from that, but I try not to get caught up in it. Criticism of any creative work is really the expression of an opinion, and we all have them. And something that set me free, you're allowed to have your opinions, just like I'm allowed to have mine. And any kind of strong reaction that I have to your opinion is really more about me than it is about you. And sometimes, for me at least, it was mainly about me not wanting you to have your opinion about me. And the truth is you're allowed to have your opinion about me and anything that I write or put out there. And then finally, that to get my first book out meant I can only improve from here. So I thought, if I've said for a long time, I gave my own book a B-, and I thought this will be the worst I'll ever be at writing. Like next time, maybe I'll get a B of my own self-assessment. And so this should be the worst I ever do, writing a book, right? And so I can only go up from here. So that's how I got over the criticism. And I'll tell you, those 3 sound really simple, but it took me years to get past that. And now I'm just a lot less afraid. And now that I've done it, I'm like, why didn't I do it sooner? One of the questions that came in, I'm going to scroll back up, comes from Amy. And she says, Shannon, what was the most challenging part of this book to write? And I'll tell you, Amy, the most challenging part, believe it or not, was the editing process. Because it was hard for me to let go and say, okay, it's done, stop. Now, I mean, getting past like the proofreading. I don't mean like, I wanted to make sure there weren't misspelled words or any dangling participles. And, goodness gracious, there's probably something in here that some of you have found, a misspelled word or a typo, I'm sure. But really being able to just let go and say, and hit that publish button. That was the hardest part, because I feel like I was in this endless kind of process of editing, and not just editing like little things like that, comma splices and taking care of grammatical errors. But I would read and reread and say, oh man, I could perfect that chapter a little bit more. Or I could write this and be more succinct. Or I could get rid of some words here to make this a little more, to make this clip along quicker. And so eventually I had to just let go of that and say, okay, it's done. And back to my previous comment, I had to accept that, okay, this is at the very least, this is the worst I'll ever write. And that the next one will be a little bit better. So hopefully that answers your question, Amy, but open to any other questions. We have just a couple minutes left. Rich, thank you. You mentioned the chapter on identifying personal values was most helpful to you. The process of discovering your values has been an elusive task, but thinking through this through the lens of gratitude was a joyful practice. Thank you for that, Rich. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Yeah, Charmaine, it is hard to let go of outcomes. It's a lifelong journey, I believe. Definitely believe that. Well, we have about a minute left. There's a final question. Jason, go ahead and do the randomizer. Give me a thumbs up, Jason. I can see you if you've got winners. He's got thumbs up. Am I available to speak to groups? Yes, Andrew, I'm available to speak to groups. I speak on, I'll tell you what I like to speak on, my favorite things to speak on. So you can decide if you want me or if you're like, heck no, we do not want her with our group. Number one, if you look in the book, you'll notice there's a section there on mindset where I talk about the hula hoop of change. That's probably my most favorite thing to talk about. But I also give talks on each of these mindsets, either individually as a talk or as a whole. And then I also give talks on Care to Lead, which is the actual training program that is a kind of a partner to this. Rich says, I'm looking to hire my first full-time hire. What key values should I look for in a servant leader at this level of influence? My first full-time hire. That's a great question. So I'm going to answer it in a couple different ways, Rich, because one thing is, here's what's difficult. When you're interviewing people, first of all, you have to know how to interview for what I'll say is you have to be able to interview to identify character traits. Everybody says that they are, like, for example, Rich, let's say a question you ask is, hello, Susan, do you value getting things done on time and efficiently? Oh yes, I'm very efficient, I'm very timely. Who in an interview is gonna say, nah, that's not important to me. I think being on time, right? Nobody does that. And so the key is in the interview process, Rich, is to ask qualifying questions that dig deeper. And Adam can help you with this. You know who I'm talking about. Adam McCampbell can help you with this specifically and help you figure out, like, specifically to know what questions to ask. But generally speaking, asking a qualifying question, oh, okay, Susan, so you say being on time is important to you, or being efficient with your work is important to you. Tell me about a specific scenario in the last 2 weeks where you had to be super efficient with your work. Explain it to me. You'll know right away if they're telling the truth because they will be very specific in their example. If they are grasping for details like, well, just whenever I work on a project, if they're generalized in their response, more than likely they don't have any demonstrated knowledge. They're like I was. They have aspirations towards working in a timely way, but maybe they don't know how to operationalize it. And so the key is to ask for them to go back into their file system in their brain and ask for specific examples. And so when you ask those questions, you want to ask questions about the key values. What do you value? And someone will say, I value, let's say, honesty. Can you tell me about a time where honesty was challenged at work recently and what were the outcomes? Again, you listen for specificity. So you ask them straightforward what's their values and then ask them to give you a specific example. So that's one way. And Rich, if you want, we can chat offline of some other ways to do that. There's actually an assessment you can use too. So awesome. So we need to end. Jason, do you want me to put you on stage to give the winners, or do you want to just tell me no? He's saying no. Is it because you have just a t-shirt on? Not just, I'm sure he has pants on too. I'm just saying.
Jason, you always got to be camera ready. Always.
Can you tell that I do not care about formality? All right. So, Jason, who was our winner for Impact Columbus? Who won the Impact Columbus ticket? Is it in my text? Oh, it is. I bet you he texted to me. Oh, it's in the private chat. My bad. Here we go. Okay. The Impact Columbus winner is Diana Pennyman. Congratulations, Diana. Diana Pennyman. And then the CARE winner, oh my gosh, can't believe it, Charmaine. Charmaine, that means you are getting, Charmaine Crook, she's getting the latest, greatest installment of CARE. And you know what, because you went through NextGen so long ago, Charmaine, this is going to be all new to you, pretty much. So congratulations to our winners. Sorry we went over a little bit, but I wanted to make sure I answered those questions. Thank you, guests, for being here. Thank you for folks online.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Shannon.
No problem. Thank you.
Diana, if you could, I know how to get a hold of Charmaine because she's on our email list, but I'm not 100% sure if I have your contact information. Jason, how should we get that from her so that we can get her that ticket? Didn't think of that till right now. You know what you can do, Diana? Send us a Facebook message on our Facebook page, and we will send you what you need. Does that sound good? I want to make sure you heard that, Diana. Send us a Facebook message, and we will get you what you need for that ticket. All right? Charmaine will reach out to you by email. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much.
All right,
Thanks so much.
bye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats, Shannon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.